Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Lion, the Way, and the War, where we discuss Jesus, His church, and the spiritual battle that surrounds us all. My name is Craig Allison, and I'll be your host. All right, joining me on today's episode is Jason Brazier, who grew up in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. Jason moved to Chattanooga after graduating from Freed-Hardeman University, where he double majored in youth ministry and communications. He received a Master of Arts in Christian Ministries from Lipscomb University and a master's degree in pastoral counseling from Liberty University. Jason has served as youth and family minister for 12 years in his past. He's currently working at Greater Chattanooga Christian Services, been there since 2019. He's a licensed clinical pastoral therapist and specializes in CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy, and narrative therapy. He's also certified Prepare Enrich facilitator and works with adolescents, adults, couples, and families. Jason's married, and he and his wife have 2 sons and a foster daughter. In his spare time, Jason enjoys reading, spending time with family. I put reading there. That's not even on here.
I do.
You do enjoy reading. Okay, it seems like you're a reading kind of guy. Spending time with family, friends, enjoys food, board games, music, and disc golf. Jason, thanks for joining me on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
How long have you been married?
So it was September 6th, and that was 16 years.
That's probably going to be the hardest question you get today.
Okay. I did it.
So
it just happened. So
everything
I
from now is downhill.
Yeah.
So we're good. So youth ministry, from youth ministry to therapy, that kind of makes sense to me. Like probably after doing youth ministry, you needed some therapy, right?
Yeah, that's right. Somebody said, I was at a conference and met somebody, a youth minister who's now doing counseling, and he was like, man, I would not have pegged you to be 39, which I am. And he said, even with that, what did he call it? The frosted tips up there. And anyways, my youth group kids used to always joke about, yeah, I gave you that gray hair.
That's interesting. Somebody was just the other day, 2 days ago maybe, was talking about how presidents age. You can see, the age, and they're like, that'll literally happen to you doing campus ministry. Because when I started, I looked really young. I was 42 when I started, and I looked like a 30-year-old, and it caught up to me. Like I've now look my age, I think, for the most part. So,
you're looking great though.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
I didn't know which way he meant about like whether I looked younger or older. I took it as I actually look younger than what I am, but he may have meant the other way. Who knows?
Take it as younger. Yeah. I mean, if it's ambiguous, then just go with
right.
Yeah. Some pros and cons of youth ministry, youth programs, because I didn't realize you had been in youth ministry for as long as you had been, and I will not pass up an opportunity to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of youth ministry. I have very strong feelings towards youth ministry and the damage that youth ministry, the common shape of youth ministry today across the board seems to be ineffective. So I'm curious to know pros and cons of youth ministry today.
All right, tell me how you really feel there, Craig.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I don't know what you're holding to your chest there with some of those feelings, but I do. I moved through youth ministry, and I came to youth ministry from crisis in my own life when I was young, okay? And so when I was 12 years old, my parents got a divorce, and from that situation, it's uniquely hard for everyone who is in that. But what was helpful for me was my youth group to get involved with, and my youth minister who in particular kind of was there for me, a father type figure who was able to help through that. And so anyways, I came away thinking that's an important job,
right.
And I think I would like to be someone like that and do something like that. So provide a safe place for kids or families going through a hard time. It's kind of just the general concept of what youth ministry meant to me. And so I got to do that. But I quickly learned, like, maybe some of the events model, that if you plan it, they'll get changed, all that stuff. Like, turns out me wanting to help kids who are going through a hard thing, like, God heard that and he provided those kids going through really hard things. And it was really hard. That's my eventual approach to, I want to go deeper and I want to be better at those really hard things, but also just the mechanism, right? And I usually tell people, like, this isn't that giant of a departure for me from that initial thing that I wanted to do. Yeah. But what I was doing was I was trying to pay attention to 30 to 40 kids,
right,
and keeping my head on a swivel and feeling like I was somewhat effective with who knows what percentage of those that I was, kind of. But what I thought was the model was bring the kids in, and we'll change them and we'll be good. But it took me much longer than it should have to realize the family dynamics, right, and all the things, the baggage, and I am not the primary influencer in their life. I am an influencer, and I appreciate our youth minister, and I'm glad he is doing what he is doing. And I think we need a bridge between all that stuff. But drop your kids off and that, like, it's short-sighted. Yep. I haven't believed in events less in my life as a church way of, like, reaching people. Yeah. So I don't know if that's even where you're going.
No, that's exactly, yeah.
Okay.
You've articulated there at the very end that one of the main issues that I've seen from the receiving end as a former campus minister, the effects of good and not so good youth ministry. And it seems like we've transitioned into a place where, unfortunately, the youth minister is seen as the primary spiritual influencer in kids' lives, and that's on the parents. Yeah, clearly that's on the parents, and it's as if parents just breathed a sigh of relief for multiple reasons. Oh yeah, maybe feeling inadequate, not prepared spiritually, not the best person to teach their kids godly stuff, and so it's like, well, that's why we're paying a youth minister so they can provide that, and that's not working, because what I see on the tail end of that is though the kids need their moms and their dads as the primary influencer, and when they don't have that, and when it's left completely up to the responsibility of a church youth minister, when those kids get to college, man, they bolt, they're gone.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's where I'm at on it.
Yeah, it was somewhere along the journey. Carapal and the Fuller Youth Institute, they were going over stuff like sticky faith and things that, like, actually keep a kid's faith. And they were just really important things, like 5-to-1 ratios. Yep. Like if you have this many caring adults in their life, like the success rates go up so much more. Yep. Anyways, that stuff became really impactful, and I tried to do that with our youth volunteer team, to really think in those. But I was also having my own kids at that time, and that whole idea. So I can sympathize with, like, sometimes I'm so appreciative of church just because I get to drop my kids off at class, and I get to like have some not quiet time, because it's interactive time, but interactive time with other adults and all of that. But that wasn't always the case, like, that I saw. It was oftentimes a lot of single parent families that were oftentimes kids from the community who were getting dropped off, and parents were not involved in the church at all, and they were somewhat dropping off and hoping for us to be a good influence and a good impact. And I think we were, but honestly, the long-term change that we were hoping that could come from that usually didn't pan out, So
I've seen the most effective, impactful, successful college students that I've had when I've talked to them. I've talked to hundreds of them through the years, and they almost you can just go down the list and check these things off. They're coming from the ones that stick around, that are highly influential, that are serious about their faith, that have a deep spiritual maturity to them, are ones that have come from churches that have an intergenerational push, where whether it's a single family home, like, single parent home, or it's a home with mom and dad both there, that they're working in tandem with a youth minister, and they are having the primary conversations at home that are feeding into the discussions that the youth minister is going to have with them on Sundays and Wednesday nights. So there's that synergistic type of stuff going on, and it's clearly evident that it's taking place at home, that you're having devos and Bible studies and discussions at home, that the youth minister has supplemented the parents with that information to go over with their kids. So it's a really neat thing that's taking place. And then those kids, they're part of their congregation, their church. They're not like the church of tomorrow. Mm-hmm. They're the church of right now, and they have a vested interest in their church. Man, those kids, they come to college and they are just light years ahead of the rest. And unfortunately, that's less than like 1% of the kids that I've talked to.
It is. There was a particular family that we would always look at them and like just ask, like, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. And we read a lot of books together. That we see their interests, and we go to the library and we try to make sure that we're trying to learn with that in our own family. Like, we're noticing, we're integrating, their interests, and but that was just for them in general. But I think we're not trying to be innovative in ministry in general. We're trying to be integrative with or maybe we're trying to emphasize instead of integrate, what's already there. And when we try to be too flashy and do these new cool things, like, they don't really last as much. Yeah.
Okay, that's a great conversation there. I think you and I are pretty much on the same page. So I'm going to just warn the listeners, the rest of the topic for today, if you've got younger kids listening, you may want to come back to this or just screen it first if you want your kids to listen to it. We're going to be talking about some sensitive material. This is material that I have been getting requests to talk about, so I needed a mental health person here to talk about some of this stuff as it relates to our youth, to adults as well. So I'm gonna throw out some statistics here, and we're going to talk about this first topic. I want to talk about pornography, because it is something that I've researched a lot. I've taught some classes on it, and I don't see it being addressed as much as I think it needs to be addressed in the church, because it's covering a lot of demographics. So just for those that are curious, this is shocking. The statistics on it. Every second, 28,258 users are watching pornography on the internet, and 2.5 billion, that's B with a boy, bravo, 2.5 billion pornographic emails are sent. There are in excess of 1 billion, again with a B, 1 billion pornographic web pages available for viewing. Every second, 3,075 and 64 cents is being spent on porn on the internet. Every 39 minutes, a new porn video is being created in the U.S. Revenue of pornography is $13 billion in 2023 in the U.S. That's just the U.S. It's over $100 billion globally. 70% of males and 40% of females view pornography each year. In 2023, Pornhub alone reported more than 2 billion visits in a single month. 58% of the U.S. population views pornography. 35% of all internet downloads are related to pornography. The average age of exposure, get this, folks, average age now, this is the most recent research that I've found, 9 years old exposure. Now, that does not necessarily mean that you've got a 9-year-old seeking out pornography. It's just the exposure, and that can be anywhere. That can be at school. That can be doing in the school library or on the phone, or a friend comes up and says, "Hey, look at this." So exposure, 9 years old. My own years, 12 years of campus ministry, I interviewed almost every student that I can find. So we're talking, I didn't keep the exact numbers, but approaching 1,000 or so students over 12 years, and asked them, had they been exposed to pornography while in high school. Speechless here. Not one said that they had not been exposed to pornography before they were out of high school. And most of them disclosed that they had been exposed to pornography in grade school, elementary school, was their first time exposure. That's heartbreaking. Are you seeing, Jason, this type of, this level of epidemic translate or impact you as a counselor, as a therapist, in your own work, dealing with porn addictions? Is that anything that you're seeing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Multiple clients this week. Yeah.
Okay.
That seeing many, part of our job is normalizing. So it's knowing that whether this thing is very common or it's not. And with this, it's just almost accepted, not accepted in like everybody's going to do it. So let's say it's okay. It's just, it's so prevalent, that it's the exception to the rule when, particularly men, but it's also right. There's a lot of females that I've had female clients.
There's a huge uptick statistically in female viewing.
That's right. But it's a lot. And that I was thinking in my head, you're going to say 7, but 9, and I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old, but yeah, this is going to happen. I cannot proceed forward, with them with this hope and pray that they don't get exposed to it, mentality, because that is just unrealistic in the day and age that we live. So how am I going to, when my kids start getting their Chromebook and have that as part of their school, package, that is part of it that we don't really like, but that is part of it. How do we already be proactive in what's our family tech plan? How do we monitor? How do we do all that stuff that we could get into if we want to, but just knowing that this is going to happen. And so we're going to go ahead and have these talks about what healthy biblical sexuality looks like. So there's some good resources. I forgot the name of it. I was just thinking I should have, but it's from a guy from Covenant Eyes, one of the internet accountability software programs that's been around for a while, but it's one of their founders, or one of the people who worked for them that created a book, and it's for different age ranges. This one was from 6 to 10, having that conversation for parents to kids, and it was really, really helpful. Our 7-year-old was 6 then. He didn't really care nearly as much, but the 9-year-old really did care. Like he was really interested in continuing, and it built easily the conversation to have that. But like, we may have waited a little too long, but it was at the beginning of his 9th year, but just knowing, no, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. What are we going to do, about it?
Yeah. So parents may be wondering, well, when do I have that talk with my kids? Because it used to be, you have the sex talk when a kid has gone through puberty or is entering, it's much later, but now everything's kind of backed up. From a professional standpoint, when do parents need to be actually sitting down and talking to kids, their children, about what's out there and what they're going to get exposed to?
Yes. So yeah, I think that approach from that book, like it's the 6 to 10, then there's another like more discussion when you get to early adolescence, then the late adolescence talk. Like, so it's always, you should be having appropriate, not all the time, but you should be having intentional conversations as you go, as their bodies are changing, just to have a healthy sense of like, what's going on with me? Mm-hmm. Why are these natural feelings happening in me, and what do I do with them? Well, the Bible talks about this, yeah. And so to be able to facilitate that in a good, well-informed way, also claiming that for us as parents to say that we are the ones to have that conversation. So your friend at school may say something, but we're going to kindly say, hey, our family talks about that. This is a private, important thing that we talk about ourselves. So that's also a cue to them, like, hey, you're going to learn some stuff. Don't go share it, necessarily with your friends, because that's their parents, conversation for them to have with them. So anyways, but yeah, probably, again, 6 might have been just a little bit early for like him really caring or wanting to dive into depths with that. But I think much later than that, it's not a bad idea, or not too far after that is not a bad idea. We'll revisit now, in the 7th year. Yeah.
Because there is that latency stage where kids are just like, they're just completely ambiguous to it. But with the exposure of highly explicit sexual content being stuffed in their face, they're going to see it now. You've created another issue there that, I think, if we're really going to be honest here, I think most parents just don't feel either equipped to talk about this, or it's just uncomfortable to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Even when your kids are older, I can remember having the conversation with my boys, and that, I know it was awkward for them, but it was, just as awkward and uncomfortable for me too. And so part of that is hearing from health experts, mental health experts, to say, no, you need to get over it. You need to have that talk probably a lot earlier than you think, and you need to have it, on a regular, not all the time, but it shouldn't be a once and a done kind of thing. And everything I've read says, yes, you don't do once and done. You address this at pivotal stages and transitions and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think I can't exactly remember what it was. It was like 7 different sessions that they had that laid out in, and so I thought that flow was very well done. And
that's the Covenant Eyes.
The Covenant Eyes. Healthy biblical sexuality.
We'll try to find that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And we'll for the listeners, those that are watching, we'll try to find that resource and put a link to it on the bottom of our screen at the end of this, because we'll go through before we post it anyway.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so Jason, why are we ignoring this? And I'm saying that with a lot of confidence, because everybody I've talked, it's getting ignored. Churches don't want to touch it. I was pleasantly surprised. I conducted a 2-week seminar here at our church on pornography, and I was just blown away by the amount of people that came up afterwards saying, well, it's about time. Mm-hmm. So, I think the general population understands that it is an epidemic, but we're just all kind of have our heads in the sand. And so I guess my question to you is, why? What's the deal? Is there some sort of psychological hang up that we just aren't going to touch this?
Yeah, I think from my usual take on all sexual related, sexual identity related stuff, we see what we were all longing for right there in Genesis 2, right? Where we look at how God created us, and the rhythm that we were in was that we were walking together with each other and with God, but at the very end of it, it says what? The state in which we are is that we are naked and unashamed, and that, that may have some association with sex, and Adam knew his wife, or Adam knew Eve and all of that, but it's more than that. It's this what I would call is true intimacy. Like this is this is what we're all longing for, is to be intimate with one another, and the world kind of hijacks that and said we got intimate, and that means sex. But I think that's the state that we're all longing for. But very quickly after that, this is the way that we react when sin enters into the state of our lives in all its different ways. But the first reactions are, we want to hide, right? We want to cover up. We want to blame. We want to withdraw. And so I would say that's just kind of the natural inclination that I think, I don't know, we as a society, probably a lot will say it's totally normal and all that, but there's a great resource, Fight the New Drug, that is a non-religious, non-political group that is just saying, no, pornography is bad for us in general. It's an epidemic. It's the drug that we are addicted to, and it's not good for society. I said brain, heart, world. It affects our brain and our heart and our world in very negative ways. But anyways, we have this tendency that with all the shame, like we don't want to talk about it. We want to hide, And so that's just the natural inclination, because there's so much shame wrapped up in this longing for intimacy, but doing it in the wrong way. We have chosen it in what the desire that we had, Eve's desire and her longing, her will is not alignment with what God said. Hey, choose this path towards what intimacy and longing is actually fulfilled in. So anyways, there's just this resistance that's always been our resistance when sin enters the picture, to say, I'd rather not talk about this. I'd rather not be exposed, because it feels shameful. And I think I'm talking for a long time right now, and I'll be quiet in just a second, is that conversation is just really hard, because it's a really difficult topic for people, because they've been doing it in isolation for so long, convincing themselves it's not hurting anybody but them. But it's been hurting them for a while, but it's also probably been impactful of marriages. It's been adults shameful of the means and the mechanisms for which they've fulfilled some of those sexual gratifications, and just don't want to talk about that. I don't want to feel that. And also there's, I guess, maybe some of the cop-outs of what age is appropriate for it. And those should be considerations. Like, you should have hey, what you just did just a second ago, right? If you have younger kids, you should do that. But it should be more commonplace, definitely, than it is. Like, we want to point back. We want to get back to the ability to walk and talk with each other and with God without so many cover-ups, right? In our lives. And this is one of those facets. He created us to walk exposed, or what we would, in the counseling realm, to be vulnerable with other people. How do we get vulnerable again? Yeah.
You've said some stuff that have just, I'm thinking about this in terms of, God is the creator of all things, and Satan hasn't come along and created anything. He didn't create sex, but what he did was he polluted it. He corrupted it. He went in and he changed the way we access our sexual habits and our sexual relationships. It's kind of like, I use the analogy of Elmer's glue. It's meant, I put glue here on this piece of paper, and that's the purpose. It sticks two things together. Satan came along. He's like, no. That's not. You can use Elmer's glue in a much more exciting way if you sniff it.
Yeah.
Just start sniffing it and see what happens. And so all of a sudden, he's corrupted something that had, good, purposeful intent and use. And that's exactly what's taken place. I think that's what he's done with sex. And unfortunately, now we're in a society where it is so rampantly available through these screens here that it's sort of changed the playing field. Not that not that, bad sexual habits or anything new. We can go back to the time of Christ. We can go back before then. And I mean, you had temples, where prostitutes and little children were, part. So, I mean, Satan's been corrupting sex ever since the beginning, but now it's accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
And the other concerning thing, and this is the next, I guess, area that I want to explore with you, is that our young kids and then college kids, because of maybe the ease at which they've had it accessed and the time that they've been able to access it now, has created a situation where a lot of them that I've talked to just don't see it as a sin issue. They don't see it as a big deal. They see it as, everybody does, and they're not even ashamed. It's like, what are you doing this afternoon? I'm going to go back to the dorm room and watch some porn, and then I'm going to go eat. And they're like, oh, cool. Yeah, I'm probably going to look at porn later too. It's like it's not a big deal. It's like, I'm going to go shoot some basketball.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I can't even, in my own journey and struggle, I can't ever imagine me like just openly admitting that to someone. So widespread, I don't know. There's the idea we become what we normalize as well. I talked about, I don't know if I did that pre-podcast or this, but yeah, we normalize certain things and that becomes accepted, but it doesn't, I don't know if we sat with that, like it doesn't feel right to me, because this is a medium that is very fast, in a lot of ways cheap, and easy form of hitting a dopamine or feeling some sense of connection or whatever, maybe, but at the end of the day, the byproducts are like, I don't know how to necessarily be in a deep relationship. I don't know what commitment really means to someone else. Yeah. I don't know what the messiness of a relationship and all of that really looks like. And there's a lot of things that, really make that thing, and this is just a problem with our society in general, like fast, cheap, easy, like that. When that doesn't become the case, then we become anxious or depressed or, or whatever. But this is the draw, but it's also the major side effect, right? Of engaging in that form of whatever. And we can talk about it like in the form of social media. That's my way of feeling connected, but I spend past X number of hours on it, and the studies show that I feel actually more isolated and alone and depressed or anxious or whatever. But with sex or with pornography, it might be checking some of those boxes, but it's also leaving so many others unchecked by the use of that medium, or that mechanism for connection. Yeah,
and I think 'cause we can talk. There's so many aspects to this that we're not going to have time to get into. But I think the long-term destruction of it, the neural pathways that it creates in your brain, and now your the way you relate to sex is through gadgets and that kind of stuff, and so you basically destroy the potential future real relationship with another human being, a wife or a husband, and so now you've got to work through all of that to relay or reestablish the correct neural pathway. So all of that goes into, and you're talking about, I think parents need to understand, you're talking about just the very fabric of the family dynamic, where human relations are this foundational principle that God has created is now jeopardized in a way that, at least number-wise, this is new territory for society. And the long-term research on it, because it really hasn't been as accessible as it is now since, I think, 2004 or 5, whenever the cell phones became like the threshold was busted through where the majority of households now had cell phones. So long-term research on what that looks like down the road. We are in dangerously a precarious situation for the fabric of society, if you will. Not to be overly dramatic on that, but for us, from our scope, what do churches, what do Christians need to be doing that maybe we're not doing right now from your perspective as a mental health expert?
I think just the ongoing recognition of who are you created to be, and where is your place in the world. So just you're made to be an image bearer, right? Mm-hmm. And so is everyone else,
right? Imago Dei,
and that idea when I use certain means, which our culture is just very, very good at turning people into products or objects or whatever, like I'm missing out on who I could fully be or who I should view them as. And so we just need to keep that perspective always as much as we can, talking into you are an image bearer, and that means this, and so in so many, and not cheapening that. But
so what does that look like? Like when we push that down to actual real life applicable steps for, let's say, a church leader or a mom and a dad, what does that actually look like?
I think it means there's a really good book called Habits of the Household, and maybe put that in the link, but it's the speaking continually over and over again, and reminding your child, reminding yourself who they are, who God is, what their work is, and creating this. I've been more and more into the idea of liturgy in this phase of my life, because it's kind of fresh, and I'm we don't really do liturgies and all that stuff, but it's this ritual and this form of worship that we do regularly, so we create these habits mm-hmm. that we do over and over again. And basically you're trying to just set the trajectory of all of your practices and what you do. So how we use technology, how we help each other out in the family, like this is just what's normal for us. This is the normal way we do screen time. Yeah. This is the normal way we structure our week. On Wednesday nights, we go to church, this is what we do. I'm not, and my kids, like probably any kid, sometimes complains about that. And I almost sometimes make it a joke, like, I'm not tricking you. That'd be silly if we didn't go, because that's what we do,
Conviction by repetition.
That's right. More caught than taught, is a phrase that's going around a lot now, that we are modeling what is important. And that model idea means that for us as adults, we have to get very serious about how we show where we're connecting the most, So if we're going to teach screen time limits and all that stuff, we got to model it very well. And we've been, it's kind of, you said, like, when did it start? What did the iPhone came out in 2007, and it feels like it was just like a big experiment for a while, like, mm-hmm. Ooh, this is cool, And then we're like, what years in 2000? I feel like 2016 to 2018, a lot of research came out just about the impacts of screen time and all of that, like just some major studies about. Turns out it may not be doing what we had hoped it would be. And so
Steve Jobs knew he wouldn't let his kids even have, he's the creator of it. So
a lot of those Silicon Valley, founders and all of that are now like just kind of remorseful about what we could have chose to do it this way. Yeah. But it became this, and so anyways, we have to wake up to that. Like, we're past the, like, we don't know, we're ignorant about what this may do to us. Like, it's turning out like we're finding out that too much of certain things, like we can't just accept the thing that really we're trying to be sold on, because that's how these things are set up on. Like, it is very much an addictive model of stay on your phone and watch this thing and buy this product and fix your life and all that stuff. We have to have a very healthy skepticism if we believe as Christians, like, we're going to have to kind of be this not go with the flow source where we create our own culture of what's normal for us and our families. And the more we talk about some of that stuff, instead of just keeping it taboo, like we actually can start setting those trajectories again in a like, oh yeah, we do want to protect our kids. And that probably means that we shouldn't have all the pressures of like, you have to have this and you got to be connected this way. Like, no, what's our actual family value around connection or sexuality or struggle and difficulty and worry and all that stuff? Like, how do we get to define that in the most life-giving ways?
Yeah, what we're talking about here too is now we're in this paradigm where parents are really battling. First of all, you said it is an addictive. It's an addictive thing. You've got the dopamine releasing and stuff, so it's an actual chemical thing that's happening. But you're setting up parents now against peers.
Yeah,
and how strong, how much influence are parents going to have against what the kids are being exposed to? Really more hours than what you've got them at home. So now you've got this really incredibly challenging battle ahead of you. And I think most parents, when I say most, I'm talking about like high 90%, don't realize that they are the they're the underdog in this situation if they are not extremely intentional and proactive about establishing those convictions at home, repeating them, repetition over and over and over again. So that's a first huge challenge. I want to tie that in though, especially dealing with the pressure to normalize pornography, to normalize all the stuff that's going on in social media and the looks and all of everything that our kids today are faced with. With church, does church need to be involved in doing something about the porn addiction or the phone addictions, the social media addictions, or is that church just needs to stay out of it and leave that to the parents?
No, I don't think they can. Stay out of it and just let the parents. Like that's both. That we have to come to church to receive the resources and the motivation, the conviction, all that stuff. To then, it's kind of like the waves on the seashore. Like we go in, we get these stuff so that we can go out and we can deal with the pressure and the needs of the world, and then we come back to God in the church. That's been my view of what the church is and what it should be. It's this receding and going back and forth. But in the midst of all that, like the church encompasses the parents and the kids and the families and the generations and all that stuff. So it's all in tandem. But yeah, it has to have a say on, what are the healthiest habits? What are the ways that we think, if we believe Jesus when he says, I've come that you might have life and have it to the fullest, like we should probably be paying attention to that. And if we also believe what he said right before that, the thief comes to steal and kill and destroy, like we better be on alert, like we better listen to the voice of the good shepherd instead of the voice of the wolf or the culture that is trying to sell us something that in the end it's just going to end up a lot of side effects that might lead to death, whatever. So
one of the, and as I'm hearing you talk about this, I'm thinking about, why do churches not address in a more aggressive manner pornography specifically, other things, but pornography is the one that we're talking about right now. In the book that I wrote, The Lion, the Way, and the War, I talked about, in part, the porn addiction and the high prevalence of pornography addictions in the church leadership, especially youth ministry and ministers, 60%, if you believe the statistics. And so one of the guys, as part of the research that I was reading, had come forward as a former minister, and he said, it's not a safe place for me to address that addiction that I have because my job is on the line. because I'm an example to other people. So it gets buried, and you extrapolate that across the board of multiple churches, hundreds of churches, and now you may begin to understand why more churches aren't really addressing this, because the leadership themselves struggle with it. And so if that's the case, which I believe it is, then we may be leaving one of our best players on the sidelines to help moms and dads, to help kids that are struggling with it. So I'm throwing that out there as from your end, from your perspective, do you think that it would help for church leadership to be, I guess, more aggressive? I don't know if that's the right word, but coming up with structured programs and saying, as a member here, we want you as moms and dads to go through this seminar that we're going to provide, or that the access to, and just it's part of the culture of the church to provide that as a response to what's going on in society right now and the way that culture has changed around pornography.
So this has opened up a door for me, and I hope I explain this well, but I'm just going to somewhat critique the forums that we have for talking, like you just said, like for the leader who feels like they can't talk because their job is, but also just general, like talked about those barriers to vulnerability, like the mechanisms that we just sometimes use aren't safe enough, whatever, for me to feel like I can share that thing, because the models that we have necessarily used is that this is the place where I come to get knowledge imparted to me. It's not the place where I go to make confession, to be accountable, to share regularly and deeply with others so that I can actually make some traction on this
accountability,
this problem that, if we know anything about addiction, like willpower alone just gets its butt kicked by addiction, but sometimes we've taken the model of this spiritual, what one of my supervisors and other, I think people have written about, like maybe as Dallas Willard wrote, a spiritual bypass around some of these big issues. Like, that's this idea that we can just kind of try harder. We can pray, and I'm not discounting prayer. I'm just saying we kind of said we're going to do this vertical thing when God said, no, I gave you each other to do confession, which is a powerful thing when you do it, when you bear each other's burdens and all that. But anyways, for us as a church, I think we really have to just figure out what are the forums and the mechanisms that we use to actually share and go deeper. And if those are just like from a pulpit to a crowd who doesn't get to necessarily interact then with someone else and share that struggle, like that's only going to be so effective. Yeah.
So like small groups maybe as a vehicle.
I'm thinking things like that. And first off, for the leader or for whoever, like you need to go talk to someone, you can't just keep hiding this thing. You're going to need to find that. And it's a tricky process. It doesn't happen overnight to find the right accountability partner who will be there and help you and help you think through the different means of kind of staying on track. And so finding those right sources to share with, like the church should get better at figuring out how to get people to gather around tables instead of sitting in a pew just listening to someone say, this is what you should do. I like that. Does that make sense?
Yes, perfect. Yeah. I hope everybody else understands that. Yeah. All right. So I do have a few other questions here. I want to move off from the porn stuff because that's a heavy stuff.
Let's get out.
Please, let's do. I'm moving into something that may be even worse. I don't know. Okay. What's the biggest health concern that you see? And I know, we talk about the rates of anxiety, the rates of depression, the rates of suicide. Man, they've all just gone through I say gone through the roof. I don't want to be overly. They have increased substantially since in the last 20 years, especially the prevalence among young teenage girls. seems to be the highest hit category. What is going on? Like, why? Do you know? Do we have an answer?
Yeah, I think I'm not going to be I don't want to be a Luddite, but I just think the means of
wait, hang on. I don't.
A Luddite,
I'm not often tripped up by a word, but I don't know what that word means.
The Luddite is someone who's just totally against technology, breaking any inventions or any technological advancements. Just anyways, it's a group that does not believe in using technology. Anyways, but so I don't want to be that necessarily and say that all technology is bad, because this is who we are. Some really good, one of the best sources of looking at that idea is I've found from Andy Crouch, he wrote a book. It's a real generic and kind of boring name, like The Life You've Always Wanted or something like that, which just sounds like a dumb book, but it's actually a great book about technology and its impact. But anyways, back to the question of the young girl, like just in such a identity informed state, like being a middle schooler and all of that was always hard, but now you have to do it living kind of this double life. You're IRL, you're in real life, which is the term kids use, but then you've also, because that, when they say that, they mean there's another life, right? That they have to maintain and they have to manage and they have to be something. Yeah. And that is exhausting. Yeah. I thankfully,
for an adult, what is it for a kid who's still struggling with all the identity issues?
Yeah. And so if you are just left unfettered to go and try to do that on your own without some checks and balances about, no, this is who you are, this comparison and all of that stuff, it's a losing game, if you don't, like, you're going to keep going to that well and it's just going to keep coming back with an empty bucket, and that's what the statistics are showing, that too much of that. So I don't want to point to that, but I think I think Time Magazine in 2012 had this, like, it was this big article, the kids aren't all right, and it was just kind of going through that every year since 2012, like it's been a decline, or since maybe it's since 2012. Maybe it came out later, but 2016 or something like that. But anyways, I was saying, like, it was steady for a while until 2012, and then it started kind of the rates of anxiety and depression
started going up,
have kept increasing since that time. So advancement of technology and all that stuff do correlate. It's not the only thing. There's always been issues, and we haven't always just been. There's no major golden ages, but I think there's all sorts of generational considerations and philosophical, things to consider about in this day and age. Why are we struggling like we are? That's a real complicated question, but that's one of them that I think is part of the consideration. The unfettered and the very difficult comparison that happens through unrestrained use or unsupervised use of social media and all that. And that's for adults as well. Like, we're in a political season. You're just going to see a lot of more people become jerks, during, or you're going to feel like they are. There's going to be a lot more of pulling away and withdrawing, because we've got a very kind of out of control anger and expression of anger situation kind of in our society. We're really upset about something and we don't know how to deal with it, and turns out that's a great way to, like, sell a product or, like, to get people engaged in these means that are very shallow, and it doesn't do good things for us. So that's one of them. I think also just for young people, I think that they're feeling pressures financially, like inflation, price of houses and things like that. Like that, I imagine you as like the former campus minister, like it's a different time. It is absolutely a different time right now as far as just the ability to live that American dream.
Well, I can remember when I graduated from college, the dream of being able to purchase a home in a foreseeable future, within 5 years was very much an obtainable goal to have. Today, these college students spent all this money, maybe for a lot of them, they've got a lot of debt coming out, and, they would like to have a house, but that's just not possible today. And so, I can't imagine what that hopelessness, if that's the thing that you want to aspire to hopefully everybody, have a home, because that's your biggest investment ever. Yeah. For some people that funds a retirement account, just all sorts of other stuff there that's going on.
Oh, there's a lot. Yeah. That's a complicated thing, but I think there is that disparity because we have put our hopes and dreams in this thing that was sold to us, but wait, that might not be attainable for all of us. Anyways.
So. You said something earlier and I just want to, we're going to wrap things up here, but, when you said this was good, you said it's, talking from the church perspective about, pornography and stuff, and we're not going back to pornography, by the way, from the pulpit down, rather than having people in pews, you have people around more like tables and stuff. So you have this accountability and you've built this relational stuff with people that you trust and you can open up to and you can have a real genuine relationship with. And now I think about what we're talking about now with our kids just being so inundated with everything and the pressure and just, this whole nother life that they feel like they have to maintain, and the isolationism that has set in at not only with their own peer group to a high degree because of social media, but also when they come home, where's mom and dad? They're also alone. And somewhere along the way, and I know this sounds really old-fashioned, but somewhere along the way, we stop sitting down at tables with our family each night, and kind of like the table at church, that the real meaningful stuff happens. And so everyone is so busy now, and they feel like they have to measure up and compete with everybody else because they see the perfect stuff all the time on a screen in front of their face. And they're like, well, we're not measuring up to that. So it's not just the kids, it's mom and dad also setting that pattern and establishing that as like normal. And it's not. It's not normal at all. No. And so, I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but it seems like to me, and again, this is, maybe oversimplifying a much more complex issue, but just getting back to reconnecting as families. We sit down together, we make a meal a priority, we talk about life, we talk about real stuff, we talk about what's truly, truly important. And that's the grounding that we come back to each and every night, and that becomes sacred. That becomes something that we protect. I can remember my mom and dad, we sat down my dad was a preacher. We sat down with a meal together and the phone would ring. And any other time we'd answer it. But if we're at dinner, that phone sometimes was off the hook, For those that learn, phones used to hang on a hook.
That's right.
I don't know. Is that something maybe we need to start looking at more or promoting more? I don't know.
Yeah. Author of Habits of the Household, that I can't think of his name right now, but he calls that the table is a keystone habit. Like he calls that like, this is something that accomplishes so much if you just put that practice
not just about
into
eating.
Place. Yeah. And what you do while you're sitting, like there's a lot of good things, but just committing to that practice. And I think I'm not trying to belittle some means and methods. I just know from my own life, like when I think about evangelism and I think about deep conversations, and I've gone on a lot of mission trips and I've taught a lot of classes, and I don't want to discount those. There's been some that have really probably been good and impactful and all that stuff. But I think most of the really spreading the good news for me in my life has been around a table than from a podium, or wherever. Like that's where it's happened for me with people in my life, I think. So I think, just that habit of, I like to call it like my family is trying to establish sacred time. And eventually we want to believe that every moment can be holy. We believe that, but I'm really trying to set these sections up like this is us really saying this is sacred time, you know, and we believe this, and this is set apart time. And we need that because you know, you can go to many restaurants and you're just not going to see set apart time.
Right.
You're going to see people feeling like they're setting apart because they're, you know, they're distracted, or we want to be, we've got our digital pacifiers in, you know, to give us something to do. So
I think that's a fundamental truth. I don't think it's anecdotal for you or me or anybody else. I think we've lost sight of it. And, you know, I happen to get very passionate about when I talk about it, but I've seen it work over and over again, like reconnecting around a table, not just in the family setting, but all settings. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's a reason that God created us with a stomach and an appetite, and you know it releases endorphins and stuff when you sit down having a meal together. Jesus used it a lot as a technique. I think it's a fundamental principle of how we are to relate to one another as human beings. Man, this has been a good conversation.
Thanks, Craig. I'm glad you had me, and I'm glad it's going the way you wanted it to.
So we are at a time, but I do want to plug Greater Chattanooga Counseling Services. Is that right?
Christian Services.
Greater Chattanooga Christian Services. Did it used to be Greater Chattanooga Christian Counseling Services?
No.
Never. I just was making that up.
But we do counseling. We've talked about, it's a mouthful, and we do counseling, so that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, that's it. GCCS, Greater Chattanooga Christian Services.
Greater Chattanooga Christian Services on Tie High Drive in Chattanooga. Mm-hmm. And what's the phone number there?
423-400-8847. I think that's right.
Okay. Yeah. And you guys, you know, you don't have to have a referral. Somebody can just call you up and say, hey,
absolutely,
I need help. Mm-hmm. Insurance or that kind of stuff?
Don't do insurance, but oftentimes you would pay us lower than what you would pay your copay or whatever. But we can also, you can do out of network. You can file with your insurance and get, you know, if someone's in network, like the counselor gets reimbursed, but we can give, you know, the proof of counseling, and then you get reimbursed from but it'd just be out of network. But we have a sliding scale, and it's based on, you know, what your annual income is, and basically every $10,000 you pay $10 per session. But that has averaged out to us that it's like overall people pay up to $100 or sometimes $0 if they can't afford it. They can still come and get counseling, but it averages out to where, like, this year it's been $39 and however many cents. That's how much counseling has been per session for each person. So anyways, but we want to make it affordable, and that's always going to be the case. And so we partner with local congregations to make sure that people who need good, affordable Christian counseling can get it if they need it.
Are there any issues that you guys will not deal with?
Yes. I mean, we talked about it, I think, pre-recording, just about sometimes we have to know what we specialize in, what we don't specialize in. So right now we're about to hire someone who could go a little bit younger in age, because right now we don't have someone who specializes in the littles, but we're kind of 12 and up right now, and basically anybody in that age range. But
you do marital counseling, premarital counseling, addiction issues, family counseling as a family unit coming together that's struggling with stuff.
Yes.
So all of that.
Yeah, and it may come about in session that, like, we know that, man, someone does specialize in this particular thing that's really helpful in this. Yeah, for this particular client, there would be times where we would maybe pause, not necessarily cancel our sessions altogether, but hey, this person might be helpful, so we're always ready to refer out to someone else who may be a little more trained, which is a good skill to have. I used to think I needed to be all end all, and that's a bad idea. You know, to think that I'm supposed to be that. So anyways, yeah.
Okay, good information. So here in Chattanooga, local resource, they can deal with a lot of issues, or refer you to somebody else that maybe has a special. That in itself is a good thing to you guys to know other resources that the normal person is just not going to have any idea who specializes in what. So great information to have. All right, so we always close out. You got a favorite Bible verse you want to share with us?
Yes, I think this was very helpful for me during time of transition, and it was one that I kind of committed to a breath prayer. It's one that you can say on the inhale and the exhale very quickly when needed. But this was from Philippians 1:6 during kind of a difficult time, and continues to just be good for me. I always feel like, when am I going to arrive? When am I really going to get there? And this is Paul's admonition to the Philippians as he begins his book to the Philippians in 1:6. Philippians 1:6, it says, "And I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ." So he who began a good work in me will bring it to completion. That's that breath prayer that I'm trying to remind myself. He hasn't forgotten about me. I'm in process. So are you,
Good thoughts. All right, folks. If you like what you see, like and subscribe. We've got our YouTube up and running. Always consider sharing this with other people or inform other people. If you want to be a sponsor, we're always open to having sponsors. Speaking of sponsorship, I want to plug also Ministry League. The Ministry League app has over in excess of 100,000 downloads now. They're one of our sponsors. You can find us on Ministry League, and you can see there on your screen if you want to download that app. Listen, I cannot say enough good stuff about that app. That is such a great resource for parents. Talking about some of the stuff we've talked to, there's a lot of good resources there for you. And if you're watching on YouTube, consider hitting the subscribe button. Final thoughts: be good to one another, love one another. And remember that the creator of this universe loved you so much that he gave up his only son for you. Until our next podcast of The Lion, the Way, and the War, have a blessed day.